effects of stress on health. So the first thing we are going to study over here is how stress affects our immune system. So stress upsets our complex internal chemistry by draining our resources and keeping us off balance physiologically. Now we have studied all this in the GAS model, like how does stress affects our internal body chemistry by releasing some hormone, and how does it makes us more vulnerable to diseases. So it may interfere with the efficient operation of our immune system, the mechanism through which our body recognizes and destroys potentially harmful substances such as bacteria, viruses, and cancerous cells. So this is the job of our immune system. They protect us from all these viruses, bacteria, and cancerous cells. Now, when foreign substance enters into our body, they are known as antigens or pathogens. So when they appear, our body releases certain types of white blood cells which begins to multiply. Now this white blood cells, they fight with these antigens and pathogens and they protect our body. So WBCs attacks the antigen, often destroying them by engulfing them, or they produces antibodies, which is a chemical substance that combines with the antigens and they neutralize them. So when antigen or pathogen enters into our body, our immune system starts to produce phagocytes and lymphocytes. Now they are nothing but two types of WBCs. So phagocytes are nothing but white blood cells which destroys the foreign pathogen by engulfing it. Now just have a look at it, how it does. So when a pathogen or an antigen enters into our body, a phagocyte will appear and it will engulf this antigen and thus neutralize it. Lymphocytes, on the other hand, are the white blood cells which produces antibodies to slow down a pathogen. So suppose if a pathogen or an antigen enters into our body, a lymphocyte will appear and it will start producing antibodies. Now when this antibody is produced, the lymphocyte will release the antibodies towards the antigen and thus it restricts its pathway or it slows it down. Now this antibodies gets combined with the antigen and neutralize it. So if the immune system is functioning normally, it destroys many potential threats to our health, but prolonged stress may disrupt this system. So for example, studies in animals have showed that the subjects who were exposed to inescapable shocks showed reduction in this production of lymphocytes and they were prone to more stress. Studies on the effects of stress on animals and humans has also suggested that there are a variety of factors which can affect our immune system, and those factors are interpersonal relationship, loneliness, academic pressure, daily hassles, and lack of social support. They can interfere with our immune system. So in order to test how does stress affects immune system, there was an experiment done by Cohen and his colleagues in 1992. Now Cohen and his colleagues wanted to study the effects of social stability on immune system in monkeys. So before the experiment began, Cohen and his colleagues, they collected a group of monkeys, and before the experiment, they all lived in a stable or unchanging environmental conditions. Now this study long lasted for 26 months. So when the study began, Cohen and his colleague divided the group of monkeys into two groups randomly. One is known as stable group, another one is known as unstable group. Now, monkeys in the stable group, they lived in an unchanging environment throughout the time period of 26 months. Whereas monkeys in the unstable group, they lived in a very harsh environmental conditions and there were constant changes happening in their environment. Like for example, sudden loud noise, waking them up suddenly from their sleep, not letting them sleep, low supply of food, sudden change in the climatic conditions, etc. Now, they observed that monkeys in the stable group more often spend their time in various forms of social interaction, including affiliative behaviors such as engaging in passive physical contact with the other group members and grooming them, etc. Now, this resulted in strengthening their bonding. Whereas monkeys in the unstable group were not able to develop such bonds with each other as the environment was very unstable. Thus, the monkeys in the unstable group were engaged in least amount of affiliative behaviors. So, results of the experiment, it showed that if social support serves as a stress buffer, then monkeys in the unstable group who engaged in least amount of affiliative behaviors would experience greater negative impact on the measures of their immune system. So it was believed that social support is considered as a stress buffer. But in the unstable group, monkeys were not able to form that bond with each other. So each of one lacked social support. Thus, it was predicted that monkeys in the unstable group will experience higher amount of stress. Thus, the results of the experiment confirmed these predictions. So, social support may be an important buffer against the adverse effects of chronic stress. Now, these results are relevant to people too. For example, persons who are divorced or separated from their spouses often experience reduced functioning in certain aspects of their immune system compared to individuals who are happily married. So some relevant evidences suggest that effects on the stress on our immune system may be less for people who have effective ways of dealing with the stressors than those who do not. So it also depends on how we cope up with the stress or how we look at the situation. So if you have a very healthy ways of coping with no matter how much the situation is stressful, you will be having a very healthy immune system. This was proved by this experiment.